Hey, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in this world. You guys know I love that opening, right? Welcome to this edition of DrBryantSpeaks.com. I am your host, the DOC, AB, Dr. B, or just call me Aaron. Our show, of course, is for all those military veterans and families out there in the world, but, of course, anyone that is willing to listen is welcome. My name is Dr. Bryant, also a veteran, master life coach, entrepreneur, professor, and your host this evening. Now, if you are new to listening to this broadcast, I want to say welcome and thank you for tuning in. Now, every show, we will discuss new and various topics that impact families and military veterans. Many of the topics come from the listeners, and some are hot topics that are impacting each and every one of us. So, on that note, today's show topic is employment challenges. So, I received a message on social media recently, and it asked, Dr. Bryant, as a veteran, did you find it difficult to get a job when you got out? My job was in combat arms, and I am only trained to shoot and kill. Although many would think I would choose to be in law enforcement, that is really not what I want to do. Please give me some insight to how I can leverage what I was trained to do. All right, wow. I have to say this one is pretty close to my heart because I can understand being in combat arms myself. So I was an 11 Bravo. That's now obviously from 11 Bravo, which is infantry. I went to AIT. Trained there in advanced infantry training, and then was able to move on. And because of my contract, it allowed me to go to Airborne School. So when I graduated from Airborne School, it went from 11 Bravo to 11 Bravo Papa. And then from there, I graduated, and then I went on to RIP. Now, we don't have RIP anymore, but at the time, it was called Ranger Indoctrination Program. So it's kind of like a pre-course, kind of the military, when you go into basic, it separates the boys, the men from men. Well, RIP kind of separates the men to become supermen. And that's kind of how it is. You go through a 3-week grueling course to see if you can handle it in the Ranger Battalion. And I was able to do that and moved on to the battalion. So I can understand when you choose to go into the military, you're not fully aware of what you're going to do after that. You're so focused on getting in, either to serve your country, you're upset about 9/11, maybe you got your girlfriend pregnant, maybe you wanted the GI Bill like me. You didn't really put a whole lot of thought of why you chose that particular skill set. Now, sometimes people have a lot of an insight and know exactly what they want to do. You say, hey, I want to be a cop one day, so it makes sense for me to go in the military and be military police or security police. Makes sense. Or maybe you're like my son. He wants to be a fireman. He went in the military and became a fireman. Now he's a fireman. When he gets out, he plans on continue to be a fireman. So sometimes people are lucky enough to have those options. You go in, you become a doctor because you choose to be a doctor when you get out. And you're lucky enough to do that. But not everybody has that. I remember years ago, I ran a nonprofit, a 501c3 called Armed Services Alliance Program. And that program was designed to help young individuals who was considering going in the military to improve their ASVAB scores. Now, the ASVAB scores, for those who don't know, is a testing process that is facilitated by DoD, Department of Defense, in which they assess your knowledge. Now, some military branches are quite rigid in their expectations. I'm not going to say any names for Air Force, but I will say that if you don't pass a certain score, you are not getting in. And then there's also those who are a little more lax in their score expectations, and you can actually get in even though you may not score the highest, but it shows that you are competent. These opportunities will also dictate what you're eligible for to actually perform in the military. And that's where the MOS comes in. So your occupational skill is what's going to basically be chosen by yourself, but it's going to have a reflection on your score. And you'll have plenty of options. Don't get me wrong. You take your test, you score a certain score, and the recruiter will, print out something and say, hey, here you go. You got about 15 choices here. Now, if you didn't score very well because you hated school and didn't do well in school, you might very well find that you may be having options related to truck driving or cook or supply or something that you can't seem to understand that you can actually take further in your life. However, I have a good friend of mine who's a truck driver and does very well. In fact, I have my uncle who has a successful business as a trucking company and again does very well. So it all depends on how you take the next step. So I basically will say there's nothing in the military that cannot be transformed into doing something successful for you. It's just a matter of finding what you want to do. And if your ASVAB score cannot deliver it, continue to study before you actually sign on the dotted line. Now, why did I go into combat arms? Well, for me personally, I just wanted to go in the military and do something that I felt that I would never get an opportunity to do. I wanted to do something that I felt would be very challenging, and also had something to do with that recruiter who told me that I couldn't do it. So between all of those, it kind of motivated me to do the best I could, and that's why I went to become a Ranger. I figured if I can get to special operations, nobody can tell me there's not anything I can't do. But that's me. I didn't even think past that because, again, what would I do when I get out? Just like this person who in the letter. So you get out of the military. Hopefully when you were in, you have the opportunity, either your GI Bill or your post 9/11 bill, which means you can now go to school. Education, education, education. And I'm not just saying that because my name is Dr. Bryant. I'm saying that because it's so important. It's something that nobody can take away from you. Once you get that paper, it is yours for life. For life. So why not go to school? Find something that you're interested in. Now, I know before I went in the military, my dad told me, go to school. If you don't know what you want to do, major in business. That's what his advice was to me. And that's actually really good advice. Coincidentally, I did do that. I got my bachelor's in business management, actually. Then I went on and got an executive MBA. But however, my doctorate is in something completely different. But my point is, business actually is a very general sense that could probably be spread among a lot of different fields. Now, as a military veteran, you have quite a few talents, and I'm talking to the individual behind the letter and anybody else who might be struggling with this. You have a lot of disciplines to contribute. It's not just the fact that you can pick up an M16 or an M4 or a 9mm or an M240 Golf or an M203 or whatever other weapon that you use. The point is that you actually understand what it's like to be a leader. You understand management, you understand teamwork, you have self-discipline. There's a lot of things that you can contribute to the workforce, which is one of the reasons we have a lot of corporate America companies out there trying to recruit military vets, because they want that talent, they want that skill set that you can bring to their company. So when they know that as a boss, somebody gives you an assignment, you're going to execute that assignment because you're used to that structure. So think about it. Think about how you can take what you naturally can do, that you have been doing over the years in the military, and how you can apply that to something that you enjoy. Now, the question is, what is it you enjoy? What is it that you like? Well, I know I like is helping other people. So what about a nonprofit? A 501c is a great opportunity to get involved with. Now, at the entry level, you're definitely probably not going to make a whole lot of money. But if you commit to it and you basically piggyback on the fact that you're helping others, you can start off as a staff member and then over years find yourself running that nonprofit. Now, I'll be honest, all nonprofits are not very successful and they don't do very well financially. But there are some that do very well. They got corporate support, corporate stakeholders, corporate executives on their boards, and some of those CEOs of nonprofits are bringing in $250,000 a year. However, there are those that are only bringing in about $90,000 a year and barely getting by. And that's the way it is. So you have to kind of think about what you want to do. But you can always transition from one nonprofit to another. Take your skills, learn, adapt, understand fundraising, understand how to work it, understand the system and the processes, and then go ahead and move on to another nonprofit, a bigger one that has more funding, that has more reach. And before you know it, you could find yourself being hired to run a chamber of commerce for your particular city one day. You never know where this will lead you. You might be the CEO of the Cancer Society, and that's talking about somebody who makes a lot of money. All right, let's talk about coaching. You may not even want to get involved when you got to put a shirt and a tie on. You want to do something that's more related to athletics. Again, you're coming out of the military with a certain level of discipline. So that discipline means that you can provide that to those students. Now, you might think, well, no college is going to hire me, or not even a high school. I don't have any experience. Well, start off a little lower. Let's say your favorite sport is football. You love football. You watched it all your life. You love it. You understand it. But you know you don't have any coaching background or experience. So go to the local middle school and volunteer that effort. I guarantee you they don't have the money to pay you, but you can actually start off either at a youth league or the middle school to gain that experience. Learn how to talk to parents, learn how to talk to the community, get the experience, build your team, be successful. Guess what? You may find a player who's got talent and moves into the high school level and says, no, I want my coach from before. He's the one that got me here. You may be able to get an opportunity to compete for an assistant coaching job, either special teams or maybe just on the offensive side. But the bottom line is you get that opportunity. Most of those coaches are parents, but at some point you could commit to the point where you can eventually become the head coach. Again, help your team become a top school, and some of those coaches do quite well financially. I know a particular school that I was living in the city of. That coach made 6 figures, and that's because he took his school to the California top championships, probably, I think from my understanding, 3 times out of 5. I'm aware of schools down in Southern California where I grew up, did the same thing. They didn't make as much because obviously the city demographic, but you get calls by colleges, and the colleges will give you a chance because obviously you have a talent of coaching. You have a way of bringing certain things out of a player. So consider that and work your way up. It's time consuming, I get it. But if you're a veteran and you're trying to figure out what you can do to improve your life, you're young in your mid-20s, you have a long time to build to that point. By the time you get to your 30s, you might be at the college level. Some other things to consider is trade work. Trade work, that's a field that is highly in demand, but never on the front of choices. You never hear a kid in elementary school saying, when they're asked, what do you want to do for a living? They say, I want to be a plumber. You don't hear that. But it's interesting enough to know that if you are a plumber, a quite skilled one, you can do very well. Plumbing, electricians, construction workers are skills that will always be in demand. And that's what I try to say. When you're looking at choosing a career or a job, choose something that will not go away. Do you foresee not ever having electricity? Now, we may change the way we have electricity. We're switching to all these LEDs and energy efficiencies and all that, but you can grow and evolve with that. I used to work in the field of technology. I did it for almost 2 decades, and I understand things change, things evolve, but you can change and evolve with it. But having the foundation of that knowledge gives you that opportunity to get in the door. Plumbing makes approximately about $45, and for my research, can go as high as $200 an hour. Same thing for an electrician. Now, granted, I'm not talking about unions and all this other stuff. This is simply hourly rates, probably working for a construction firm or working for somebody else. But that's pretty good money considering where you may live. And now I'm not even referring to possibility of having your own business. That's a whole nother conversation and actually on another show. Then you also have the relation of being a contractor. So if you're involved in construction, well, there's also the achievement of being a contractor. And that's a really cool gig because then you start delegating and using that leadership and being able to facilitate work among more than just a few individuals to do something very profitable. Again, something to think about. You know, cities and counties all over are getting funded for veteran training. They are actually being given and granted money by our politicians and companies saying, hey, we're going to give you XYZ millions for you to have opportunities to actually get veterans the proper training they need so we can turn around and hire them. If not in the county, if not in the city, at least they're eligible for jobs out there in the corporate world. So go to your city, go to your counties, look at what kind of programs are there for veterans. You will be amazed. I know one particular city got funded $1.2 million. They had this open house and basically they enrolled everybody. As long as you were a general or honorable discharge, you were eligible. And they facilitated the process, got the application, got you in the program, and you literally could pick whatever you wanted to do that was on that list, and it was paid for in full. So if you wanted to go into coding and get into technology, training was there. And I'm not talking about just basic coding of one particular language. They had about 5 different languages available to you. So depending on the funding and how much, you could have probably been able to do more than a couple. Can you imagine being able to go to Cisco, Salesforce, Apple, or any big time tech company and saying that I am actually certified and trained in these particular languages? And then on top of that, you're a military veteran? I can almost see it that you would literally not only get hired, but you would actually be commanding somewhere between $60 or more. And that's if you're not a contractor. If you're a full-time employee, you could even do even better than that because now you're factoring in all of your retirement, probably stock options, and other things that the corporation going to throw at you. So you literally could be doing pretty well. And in about 3 to 5 years, probably bringing in about $80. And I'm not just saying this because I'm guessing. Literally, this was my field of work, and I know people who are doing somewhere around $107 an hour. I know that because that was me at one point. So it's not impossible. And that's not even just related to coding. You can get trained in project management. You can get trained in a series of opportunities going back to even the trade. So you have to think about what it is that you're looking for and what you want. And then keep in mind, you could always say, you know what? I've gotten enough experience. I've done this for a few years. Maybe I'll start my own business. That's a whole nother world that you can achieve a lot in, because now you're talking about getting contracts, you're building relationship with people, and you actually get to keep the money to yourself versus working for somebody else and they're taking off the top. Now you get to manage your own money. So your income could do quite well based on the experiences depending on how good you are. So just think, you're a talented plumber, you're out there working for somebody else, he or she is giving you about $60 an hour, but yet they're charging the client $100 an hour. Well, that could be your money. So after you get enough experience and you think you're talented enough, start your own business. There's programs out there for veterans starting their own business. I have another show that's going to talk about that exact thing and all the benefits and opportunities behind veteran-owned businesses, the contracting behind it, the opportunities, state level, city level, federal level. All of those are available to you if you choose to go that route. The only risk is you are your own boss, so how much work you put in is what you're going to get out. Now, this particular person that wrote me this letter talked about how he or she was not interested in law enforcement and felt that because of his skills with weapons, that was probably the only thing he felt that he could do. And I actually will have to say that's not true. Now, granted, you go to the academy, you go get your peace officer standards and training, post certification, but you don't have to just be a police officer or a sheriff on the street patrolling. There are so many different things you can use with your post certification. You go to post, it's approximately 3 months. It's a physical as well as mental education of understanding law enforcement, understanding those, arrest methods, communication. You get all the standard stuff. But what you actually get to do is open the gate to other things, such as become a DMV investigator. Go work for the state and be an investigator, basically investigating driver license fraud, California ID card fraud, registration fraud, dealership fraud. There's so much of that going on just as an investigator. You got, again, state of California has, you don't want to do anything that's that intense, go work for ABC, Alcohol Beverage Control. They do a lot of misdemeanors. They just go around the bars and give citations. I'm kidding, but that's part of what they do. So there's many other things by having a post certification that can open the doors to other type of jobs. You just have to understand and think about what it is you're interested in. I know when I was involved with post and getting my certification and going through the training, I actually in my academy class was working with somebody who did high-end corporate security. I thought that was cool. She already had the job, she had a certain certification, but she needed to get something else for her to, I guess, promote maybe. But she was already involved with corporate security. They taught her how to drive, do evasive driving. They taught her all these different things. She got to travel a lot. So for somebody who is single and no kids and wants to be out there, corporate security is something to consider. And a lot of companies hire for that as well. I know depending on companies, they may have CEOs and very senior executives who require security as well. I used to work for Kaiser. I'm always open about where I've worked and where I've been. And one time I was on the airplane coming back from Miami, and as I boarded, I looked and I go, whoa, there's my CEO, Bernard. So I said, hi, Bernard. And he's looked up and he said, hello. And I said, I work for Kaiser too. I'm in a Diablo. And the funny thing is, he actually lives in the area. He's from Oakland and we're in the Bay Area. So it was kind of cool. So we actually talked. I told him what department I was in. I was responsible for that region. And it was so cool. But what I noticed is when I sat down, my seat was right behind business class. And right there in the business class, which was just 2 rows, you had, first class, had that whole front section. Then you had the little small section for business. And then I was right there. And I noticed the security guy, the executive security person for Bernard. So it was quite interesting that he travels with it wherever he goes. So again, options are open. You just have to understand and think about what it is you want to get out of it. Now, one of the challenges of being a vet, please understand, is that you mentally will have to assess who you are. That is something that you may not be aware of. So understand your capabilities based on your mental limitations. I pause because I want to make sure I say this right without insult, because that's something that I wasn't even aware of. And so when you choose to go in different routes, think about who you are as a soldier, coming back, transitioning, and being able to actually adapt to that world. Being able to work with somebody who may micromanage you, or being able to work in a structured environment. Can you do that? Are you able to adapt? Are you able to be around a lot of people? If you're a combat arms, some of these things are going to be something you have to think about. We talk about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It is a diagnosed condition, which means somebody on an expert level had to be one to diagnose to understand if you have it. Until that happened, I didn't know. So that can develop after a person is exposed to a traumatic event. So therefore, you may go for years never knowing. But it is a very common condition for many veterans after military service. So just to give you an idea, some symptoms include disturbing thoughts, feelings, dreams related to events you went through, mental or physical distress. You may have difficulty sleeping. It may change in how a person thinks or feels. A lot of this stuff I was going through, but I didn't click. I didn't understand. And there truly wasn't a lot of literature out there for me. So I want you to process all of this. Please understand I'm here for you. Feel free to go to my website, DrBryantSpeaks.com. I have all sorts of social media that will allow you to get a hold of me. And again, I'm your host, Dr. Bryant. You are listening to DrBryantSpeaks.com. Please continue to listen to my podcast. I enjoy talking to you. I hope you're listening because I'm listening to you. Now, there are no more topics at this time. Be blessed and know that I'm speaking to you. But more importantly, someone is always listening, and that someone is not just me.